Let's bring in Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington State. He's the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. Congressman, I want to start with this new 10-day pause, the president pushing back his deadline, this threat to strike Iran's energy plants. Could that mean a diplomatic path forward is possible?
It could. It doesn't seem likely at this point. Iran still says they're not talking to us. And what the nature of that deal would be is hard to say, because what we want, what President Trump wants, and what all of us want, frankly, is Iran to discontinue their nuclear program permanently, stop building ballistic missiles, and stop supporting terrorist groups in the region and across the world, for that matter. Iran has indicated they are not giving up any one of those things. And then the other thing we want is we want them to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And that's problematic as well, because now that the war is ongoing, most commercial ships, they're not going to trust just somebody's word. It's going to take a while for that to happen. So it's unclear what the president thinks he's going to get out of these negotiations at this point.
We just heard from Jake on his reporting about this divide within the White House over the war messaging. In fact, one senior White House official telling MS Now that the videos that mix footage of strikes with those internet memes, movie clips, pop music are, quote, cringe and disrespectful and gross, adding, quote, it makes me feel embarrassed. And this is a person who's not alone in expressing concern over the White House approach. And yet all current and former Trump White House officials that spoke to MS Now said they don't share these opinions inside the White House for fear of negative repercussions. What's your reaction to that?
Well, look, I mean, they know who Donald Trump is, right? I mean, we've seen this for decades, much less for his times as president. He's a crude, rude, insulting, humiliating, condescending, terrible human being. He trivializes all manner of different serious issues. So, yeah, these memes are disgusting and horrible and not the right way to look at war, not the right way of putting our men and women in the armed services in harm's way. But are they just now figuring out who Donald Trump is? I mean, and this is a huge problem on a whole series of levels I don't have time to get into here. But of course Trump has done this. It's exactly who he has always been.
But are you concerned if they don't feel comfortable offering opposing viewpoints inside those White House walls?
Well, yeah, and that's a huge problem in this war. But look, we've seen this. I mean, the Republican Party has become the Donald Trump cult. Whatever Donald Trump says, they do. And by the way, if he says one thing in the morning, they do that. If he says the exact opposite in the afternoon, they do that as well. And that's troubling on, again, too many levels to get into here. But when you're trying to prosecute a war with some sort of consistent idea of what you're trying to accomplish in a plan, bouncing all over the place and not giving legitimate advice because of your fear of how the commander-in-chief is going to react, goes from being a significant problem to potentially a catastrophic problem, and we're seeing it now. We're moving, apparently, we've already planned to move, I think it's 7,000 troops to the region. Another 10,000 might be showing up. So that's 17,000 ground forces. What are they going to do exactly? No one thinks that 17,000 ground forces are going to be able to topple the Iranian regime. So what is the plan? How are you going to use them? And if you don't have a specific plan, you are simply moving 17,000 targets into a war zone. These are ground troops. That's what they're there for. What are they going to be doing if they're not going to be used in Iran? And the fact that the president doesn't have people around him who can give honest advice about what they think makes that problem all the more worse. But even before, everything that has happened in this war, the cost of it, the inability to break the Iranian regime, completely predictable. Not just predictable, but predicted. That's what everyone said was the problem with trying to solve the Iran problem militarily. And the president, ignored that or didn't get that type of advice up front. And it's put us in the position we're in now, where there simply are no good options going forward in this war of choice that Donald Trump decided to start.
And a senior White House official telling us that they believe the president is getting bored with this war. Not that he regrets it, that he wants to move on, that he's getting bored with it. Let's move on in our discussion and talk about the DHS funding fight for a moment. Overnight, we saw the Senate passed a bill that funds most of DHS, minus the funds for ICE and Border Patrol. The measure is now heading to the House. Is it going to pass in the House?
Yes. I mean, I don't think the Republicans want to continue to own all of the disasters that are happening with TSA and at the airport. But this is really frustrating. I mean, this offer was on the table a month ago. Look, we Democrats are deeply concerned about the way immigration enforcement is being done in this country. We want to put a maximum amount of pressure on President Trump to fix that, to rein in the abuses of ICE that led to the killing of 2 U.S. citizens in Minneapolis and so many other horrific incidents. We want to rein that in. But we also don't want to cause damage to anything else that we can avoid. So we had this idea over a month ago, fund everything else, fund TSA. But President Trump wasn't interested in that type of negotiation. I mean, most of us, when we have a conflict and a difference of opinion, we're trying to resolve that with causing us the least amount of damage possible. President Trump takes the exact opposite approach. He wants to inflict a maximum amount of pain on as many people as possible to try to break the opposition and force them to do what he wants. And this is part of the result of that. I mean, look, like I said, what the Senate did last night could have been done a month ago. And all that stuff that happened at the airport would have never happened. But Trump refused to do it. And then circling back to our earlier point about the Republicans in Congress, because Trump refused to do it, even though I'm sure most Republicans in Congress knew that it was stupid, it's what Trump wants. So it's what they do without really thinking about it. And it's really unfortunate. I'm hopeful today the House will vote for this. We will end the nightmare that's happening at our airports, but it never should have happened in the first place if President Trump had been smart enough to work with us and actually get to this result so much earlier.
It's unclear, though, what Speaker Johnson is going to do, what he's going to tell the rank and file in terms of how they vote. So a lot to watch. There's nothing certain at this point. Congressman Adam Smith, thank you for your time. Appreciate you joining us.